morning. I'll tell you, yesterday it didn't look like the storm was coming based on the sky and the winds and everything, but the winds are starting to pick up here. I spent my morning at Hill's Supermarket. As we mentioned yesterday, that was one of the few stores open in town where people could get food, water, and other supplies. And the mood was really mixed there this morning. I spoke to about 30 or 40 shoppers there, spent a couple of hours there. A police officer was at the front door of the grocery store at about 11 o'clock, letting people only come out of the store. It was pretty filled, not letting anybody go in. People driving all the way from Bolivia, several 20, 30 minutes outside of town to get to the supermarket, one of the only places open. I spoke to one woman in the checkout line. She says she and her family had originally planned to evacuate, but they decided once the storm was downgraded to a Category 2, they were going to stay. And so she was at the grocery store just getting a few last-minute supplies. I spoke with a couple in the parking lot. They were feeling very anxious. So you'll remember, Charlotte in this area is under a mandatory evacuation. She was very nervous. The people who were deciding to stay, she was heading out of town as the storm is expecting to start to pick up. As you can see, the wind is rustling the trees behind me. The sky is starting to fill up with some darker clouds. When I was in the parking lot of the Hill Supermarket, you could hear the chiming of an Episcopal church, really kind of it's a sound like I can't even describe. I don't want to say it was eerie. It was almost as if faith will not be lost throughout this storm. The church sending that message to, my IFB back in. I heard some feedback. Let's see, I think we're good now. You remember this area is under mandatory evacuation. It's a town of about 5,000 people, and you can kind of see the cars going behind me. This is one of the side roads through the town, but I'll tell you, the mayor estimates about 80% of people have evacuated, but based on what I've seen today, I'll estimate that a lot more people are staying than was expected. You'll see some cars driving back and forth along this road. So, the storm is starting to roll in here. I felt a couple raindrops earlier, but the skies are filling up with clouds, and really our first indication that Florence is coming this way.
Well, Ben, the woman that you saw at the grocery store spoke for many others who feel the way she expressed, that the storm had been downgraded to a Category 2. And I think some people found relief in that, took comfort in it, thinking that the storm is not going to be as significant as first told. But we're saying it over and over and over again until the storm moves in and people see this is still a very serious storm.
Did any of those people...
Yeah, we're watching and listening...
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, we're watching very closely and listening to our meteorologists. They're obviously the experts here. You can't just look at a simple number, Category 2, 3, 4, and that will tell you everything. That's simply not the case, as our meteorologists have been saying over and over again. But in the grocery store this morning, they were bare bones staff. There was 4 or 5 employees working. The manager says this morning was just a rush, as they're one of the only stores open. Walmart closed, people getting their last-minute supplies, but really the sense from most people is that the sense of urgency has gone down, but as we are saying over and over again, that should not be the case. But yeah, people are deciding to stay here with that storm being downgraded just a little bit. There are those who are feeling anxious. And one woman, as I was getting ready to shoot part of my story, a car drove by, yelled the words "hurricane party." Perhaps they're joking, but this is not something to be taken as a joke. One woman walked over to me and she told me she was really upset that somebody would even call this a party. Somebody would even suggest that this was something to be taken lightly. She was almost in tears as her and her friend were out they're getting their last-minute supplies before evacuating. So really, there are those who are heeding the warnings and taking it very seriously here. Charlotte is a town that has a river that goes up from the ocean to up in town, and one of the main concerns here is that bottleneck effect. As the river narrows and as the storm surge and the flooding gets in, that could potentially cut off access to a bridge which connects people from place to place, Fran and John.
All right, Ben Smart reporting live from Charlotte. We will, of course, check back with you shortly. But right now we're going to go to Marissa Hunley, who is talking with the mayor of Wilmington.
Hi, Fran. Yeah, we're in downtown Wilmington at the Embassy Suites right on the Cape Fear. I was in a long line to talk to the mayor. He was just talking with Anderson Cooper from CNN. Who else have you talked to?
I've talked to
Craig Melvin with NBC, Stephanie Rule with NBC, of course Stephanie Abrams with the Weather Channel, Brian Williams last night, Don Lemon, just about everybody. They're all here. They're all concerned, and it's they're concerned about what's going to happen here.
And you've been through quite a few hurricanes. You've grown up in this area, but as mayor, how does this coverage compare to past hurricanes?
I personally have never seen coverage like this. I mean, you have almost every major news organization in the country that is here covering this, and they've been on top of it. I've also thanked them also for the amount of information that they have gotten out there to the citizens and to the public, because I believe that the public took this very seriously and heeded what we have been saying from the emergency management folks. So a lot of people have left the area. And what we're hearing from the National Weather Service is 20, 30, up to maybe even 40 inches of rain in some isolated areas. So this is going to be a significant rain event, because this storm is going to be on top of us for about 48 hours. It's a large storm. It's 400 miles wide. So we're going to be feeling the effects of this for days. So, my concern is that, after this storm passes, we're going to have a lot of flooded creeks, we're going to have a lot of flooded roadways. Predominantly where we've had flooding in the past, you're going to see flooding again. And when people may want to try to get out there to drive around, and you see, an area where you think you can get through with your car or your truck, and you're not going to be able to get through it. And we've seen that situation in Matthew 2 years ago, where we lost several people that died trying to get through, heavy standing water. So we're going to see the same thing in those same areas, and we're going to also see a lot of downed trees, a lot of downed power lines. It's going to take some time to get the power back on to this community, but we have Duke Power that is positioning a lot of resources about 100 miles from here in Kinston at the Global Trans Park. So when this storm passes, they'll be bringing in those resources as quickly as possible. And then the other thing that has us concerned is with the amount of people that have moved out of the area. I know a lot of people are going to want to move back into the area as soon as this storm passes, to get back to their homes and get back to Wilmington. And some of those creeks and rivers, some of that water goes down. We may not be able to get you back here in a day or 2 days. It may take 2 or 3, 4 days to get back.
And going back to all of the support that you've gotten and coverage, you've gotten the attention of the president. President Trump called you, like an hour and a half ago?
He did, and he offered any kind of assistance at the federal level. He said he's been watching the storm. He's been getting updates on the track of the storm. He understands this is a pretty significant event for our community, and he just wanted me to know that anything that he can do as the president and the resources of the federal government are at our disposal, and we appreciate him calling.
What was it like to get a call from the president?
It was good. It was, and I told him that. I said, you usually don't get a call from the president of the United States, but I was in the middle of a press conference there at the New Hanover County executive office there, and for calling me. But I told him I appreciated him taking out from his busy schedule to talk to me. Of course, the vice president was there also, but they just wanted me to know that they're watching the situation, they're on top of the situation, and when this thing passes, anything that we need from FEMA, that they're there for us. And I told him I appreciated him calling me and telling and giving us the assurance that the federal government will be there to back us. And we've always had a good relationship with the federal government when it comes to storms and storm events, and it's been a good coordinated effort between the federal government, the state government, and the local governments, everybody working together.
I mean, it's got to be pretty exciting getting a call from the president, but when you think of the circumstances...
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect to get a call. In the middle of the press conference today, my phone went off. It was my cell phone that went off, and when the cell phone went off, I didn't know who it was, and I cut it off, and then I saw it come over again, and I said, "Oh my goodness, somebody's calling me." So I went out to get the call, and it was the White House, and they said the president would like to speak with you, and I was like, "Of course." So, but I appreciate him calling, and I appreciate him his kind words, and also the concerns that he has for the people in this region, in this area.
And you think about the Cape Fear River. Floyd set the record for flooding here, right? Was it 23 feet?
About 23 feet, and we expect that to be surpassed in this storm, with this storm event, and that's got us all concerned.
And you look over at the marina over here and the pilings, and we think, they're about 10 feet high?
Yes, and we just hope that they have been built those pilings are long enough that they will keep those floating docks in place, or else those floating docks are going to go over those pilings, and we're going to see a lot of boats and that entire marina over on the other side of the river.
But you were talking about how in Wilmington we have a good situation with the river flooding because there is that barrier of the marshland.
Yeah, we have a tremendous amount of marsh area that extends from basically Wilmington all the way to Leland. So we have a large area where the water can dissipate once it comes downstream, which helps. I'm not saying we're not going to get flooding, because we are going to get flooding, especially in the downtown area, especially around the federal courthouse and Waterfront Park. But it does help to have that large of an area where the water can then expand once it gets here. In other areas, like when you get up around Elizabethtown or Lumberton, Fair Bluff, where the river is very narrow and then it spills over, it has nowhere to go. But they're on the sides, and of course a lot of people have built their homes right there, and of course if it exceeds flood stages, that's where we get a lot of the flooding. I also got a call from also the governor's office, as well as Senator Tillis, telling us that anything that they could do to help us down here, they would definitely be here for us. So I appreciate everybody coming together to give us the help that we're going to need when this thing is finally gone.
And of course it's hard to tell what exactly is going to happen with downtown, but what do you expect it to look like in a few days?
Well, hopefully, we're going to get through this thing and we're going to be okay. We've been through a lot of hurricanes, and I've lived here all my life, and we've seen quite a few of them. I think downtown will be okay, but we're going to have flooding. There's no doubt about it. We're going to have trees that are going to come down. We're going to have power possibly out for a week, maybe even 10 days. We're going to have damage to roofs and buildings, and there's no doubt about it. With the winds even at 105 to 110, maybe a gust up to 120, we're going to have damage. We just hope it's minimal. I think everybody is prepared. I think the citizens are doing a phenomenal job in getting prepared. And so we're going to ride this thing out, and when it's over,
With the Wilmington Facebook page, but I just saw a post on there about how somebody in Houston during Harvey got a box of, I think, toiletries from somebody in Wilmington, and he posted a picture of that box and said, like, you were there for us then, we're going to be there for you now.
And that's, I can't tell you how many people from around the country are saying, what do you need? We want to come in and help. Plus, the fact is that when there are disasters in other parts of the country, whether it be in Florida or be in Texas or wherever San Juan, Puerto Rico, this state, this community also gives something back and also gets out there and works hard to help those communities. So I think it's great to see that kind of camaraderie as a nation.
Yeah, did Fran, John, did you guys want to ask anything while I've got him here?
Well, no, we're going to ask you to ask him to preserve his voice because we're going to want to talk to him later on as this storm moves in. And he's had a very, very busy morning. Thank you, Marissa. We'll talk with him later. He really has had a busy morning talking to Anderson Cooper. Very busy. But, I mean, I watched him earlier talking to Anderson Cooper and Craig Melvin and all of the media outlets talking to him. And then, of course, he gets a phone call from the President of the United States. So he's been very busy this morning and talking a lot. So we'll preserve his voice for now. We do have some breaking news to pass along.
Yeah, the Brunswick nuclear plant is being shut down. Duke Energy is telling us they have operators staying at the plant during the storm, and they're going to continue to monitor the equipment there. But they're going to keep the nuclear units in a safe condition until they can be put back into service there.
Now, Duke Energy ensures us that the nuclear plant has several layers of protection. But once again, the breaking news is that the Brunswick nuclear plant is being shut down. Now, we've been saying all along that there will be power outages. From what we gather, there will be 100% power outages. How long this will last, we simply do not know.
And you heard even the mayor when Marissa asked him, what do you think is going to happen with downtown? He said, we're going to have power outages, possibly 7 to 10 days. And that's what Duke Energy leaders during the media conference I listened to yesterday were saying. Worst case scenario, up to 3 million people might lose power. And it could be for not just days but weeks, depending on how quickly they can get in to assess things. And the governor warned that there was going to be widespread power outages, and he wasn't kidding because it's actually starting to hit all over the place. There's already at least 2,000 power outages in the area there, and that's just in New Bern, North Carolina.
And closer to home in New Hanover County, there's already about 400. Creekwood has 160 outages at last check, and those could increase as the hours progress.
Yeah, 9th and Chestnut, 38 people without there. We had some reports earlier of people on Semmes Drive in the Pine Valley area without power. Had some people along Highway 74, 76 between, if I remember correctly, Bolton and the Mako Road area. They were without power, and that's going to continue to happen. That's kind of a foregone conclusion with 2 days worth of storm surge and hurricane force winds.
Well, and I said this earlier during our digital newscast. Don't put your pride aside. If you don't have a generator and you have a neighbor or a friend who does, and you're still with the ability to go to them, call them and say, hey, is it okay if I come and hang out with you? Because once we lose power, then you're going to lose cell phone service, and you're going to lose the ability to stay connected, and you're not going to be able to watch us on TV. You're going to have to rely on your cell phones, and then if you lose those, then you've lost communication. So I'm just putting that out there. If you know someone who has a generator and you don't hesitate to call them and say, is it okay if I come over? Of course, if you've got pets, then that's going to be an issue. But again, if you know someone, I know I would. I don't have a generator. I don't really want one because they scare me. I don't know how to operate them. But I would call a friend and say, look, I know you have one. Is it okay if I come and hang out?
On the way to the station this morning, I stopped in at one of the convenience stores along 17th Street Extension. You stopped at Tidal Walk on the way in, right? Yes, you stopped in. You heard Ben talk about the Hill Supermarket went down there in the Charlotte area. Well, Bob Bonner has been driving around and found that some restaurants are open even right now.
So with Hurricane Florence quickly approaching the coast, expected to start feeling the impacts later this morning, early afternoon, you'd think a lot of places might be closed. There might not be options for me if I stayed. Maybe you're hungry. Maybe you just need those last-minute items, milk, just anything. We're driving around town right now in Wilmington. Surprisingly, you do have options, especially when it comes to food and sundries.
And we knew that there'd be a lot of people looking for, something to get out and get to eat before this storm hit us. And we felt, it was all volunteers. Just come in, started working. And we'll shut it down in time to get them home safe. Pay attention to you guys, actually. And see when the winds start picking up, and we'll base it on that.
So far, my producer Peyton and I have found Carolina Beach Road to really be a hot spot around Shipyard Boulevard. You've got the KFC, You've got Hardee's is open, Substop is open, you know, the gas station across the street. There are a lot of things that are open right now, ready to serve you. And the people we're talking to are saying that is why they're open. They want to help everyone ride this storm out and be safe.
Did he just say Substop is open?
He said Substop is open.
And chicken.
Yeah.
Could somebody bring us some chicken? I'm kidding. Please
Yeah,
don't take
do
me
not.
seriously there. I was really kidding.
And you're getting to the point because we were talking to Chelsea Donovan, 20 minutes ago, and you're seeing some of the gusts of wind take her breath away as she was starting to talk. Those conditions are going to degrade as the day goes on, and those other ways of, safely getting around are going to go by the wayside as the storm gets stronger.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to go over to Gannon now. Gannon, when we talked earlier with Ben Smart, he talked about running into a lady in the grocery store who said, well, now that it's been downgraded to a Category 2, and we're going to repeat it until it sinks in, that because it is now a Category 2 does not really change the impact of this storm.
Right. I want to talk about this notion of generational storms. Fran and John, I would label locally Hazel as a generational storm, ones you talk about for decades. Diana, Floyd, and Fran, just to name a few. Would you agree?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought up Diana,
Right.
because someone sent me a Facebook message yesterday and said, wish you all would talk more about that one because it was a very significant
The 1980s were a quiet period of hurricanes
Yes.
overall,
Right.
Hugo in 89, but Diana was a lone exception. And so let's break down the categories, and they're just for wind speeds. Hazel, 4.
Right?
Hazel 4.
Diana, 1, 2. It was milling about. Floyd, 2.
But,
And
yeah,
Fran, 3. Just
Right.
for that one metric category, I think too much is made of it.
yeah. Oh, Floyd and Fran.
Because they're all different categories. We all remember them.
Yeah, Floyd and Fran, generational, I think they both were of that stature because of the damage they created, but both had gotten to 4, Category 4, and then backed off, similar to what is happening in this instance.
Correct.
And just because it goes down to 2, what still has that power that it generated, all that storm surge and everything else. So, we try to talk about this, leaders try to talk about, don't pay attention to category. It's what's coming that you need to pay attention about.
Absolutely. And a recent example, Hurricane Sandy, will go down in history as making landfall on New Jersey as a Category 1. And it wrecked the entire coast from a storm surge standpoint because it came directly in. And it was large. And those are factors too. So I'm glad you brought that up, Fran, because when I
So the big reminder, I think, for everybody is, it is the peak of the season. We expect it to be busy, but this is definitely making up for August not being too busy. We're definitely hyperactive right now.
Well, let's hope in future years we don't do what's necessary to make up with it. We'd rather have a CT here in Wilmington, North Carolina, right in the bullseye, and we hope to be able to talk with you again as the next couple of days go through.
You bet.
All right, thank you so much. Actually, an honor to talk to Ken Graham, who is the director of the National Hurricane Center. And obviously, we are focused on Florence, but we would need to mention that there are other storms out there, and have to remind folks, because I think people think because we are in the middle of September that we are near the end of hurricane season when we're actually in the peak of it. When we were just talking about Hazel wasn't until October 15th.
Right.
Diana was in September, and obviously we just talked about some other storms, so we cannot lose sight of the fact that we are in hurricane season, and it doesn't end until November.
And again, our experience, we haven't had anything like this really kind of bear down on us since Floyd. But for those of you who have not been here that long, we went through a 3-year period from 1996 to 1999 where one storm after another was the norm here. Right. We had Bertha, and then a short time later we had Fran. We had Dennis, and then a short time later we had Floyd. So getting one every other year or so, like we did in the late 2000s and early in this decade, became the norm.
Right.
And, God forbid we have something else kind of line up after this one, but it's happened here before.
Absolutely.
And so we hope we don't have to go through that like we did in the past.
But then we've also gone through a period where we didn't have a storm for a very long time, and people got complacent. And you had to remind people what it means to get prepared for a hurricane. I remember I was 2 years on the job with Hurricane Diana, and that was 1984, a while back. And honestly, John, I don't remember any other hurricanes before that. Now, of course, before that I was in college and in high school and so forth, and I had heard about Hazel. I wasn't born then yet, but I really didn't know much about hurricanes until Diana, and it was an eye-opener and a learning experience. And I think that's what's happening with a lot of folks with Florence. They are learning a lot about hurricanes that they really didn't know, because we haven't really had one of this magnitude in so long. There are some people who, first of all, weren't even born when we had Fran, which was significant, and then those who were, it's been so long, they don't remember how significant these storms are and what impact they can have. And this one, we keep hearing all along, is likely going to be historical.
Yeah, and this is going to be that on-the-job learning that so many thousands of families are going to have in their mind now. Preparation for next year, I think, will be a lot better than preparation was this year. They wanted us to mention that Chelsea Donovan shared a short time ago that they were shutting off the water on Carolina Beach at 2 o'clock.
Right.
We're getting word from Topsail Beach that they're actually cutting water off at 2 o'clock there as well.
Hendry County released this information on Twitter. A mandatory evacuation was issued for Topsail yesterday, so a lot of folks are not even there, but for those who are, the water will be shut off.
Yeah, so if you're sticking around, you're not going to have water service. On the right, our weather camera from Surf City, flying the